Hey everybody, welcome to the Realm Roundtable, a podcast about all things Realm Royale. I'm your host, the Monty Mole. This is my co-host, Comp TV Lee. And tonight we're joined by Jeff Days. He's a top 500 Overwatch player and a standout in the Realm Royale community. He's made quite a fuss, winning multiple duo tournaments with his buddy Arrow in the RealmCom tournaments. So thanks for being here tonight, dude.
It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, well, I'm excited just to be back. We took like a pretty big break from the podcast. It's been probably like a month since we did our last one, Lee?
Yeah, that's true. Well, because you did one without me as well.
I did. I'm sorry. We had some scheduling issues on the last episode. You were missed, bro. So I'm glad that you're back for this.
I listened, though. I listened to the whole thing. I cried a little bit, but...
Cried a little bit on the inside. So
No, it was on the outside.
Oh, you cried like physically, like you shed actual tears. He's like,
sleep that night.
Watching the podcast, just like weeping, like ugly cry. I'm sorry,
Got
dude.
into a depression, played a couple rounds of Apex, like, what am I doing?
So, well, Jeff, it's good to have you here, dude. Just to get a little bit more about you. I mean, I just know you through, the Realm community, but don't know a lot about you personally. Like, how'd you get plugged in? Like, obviously you played Overwatch and had some success there. How'd you get plugged into Realm Royale?
Well, I actually started playing the game in the early summer. I think it was my friends that recommended trying it. I was playing Overwatch pretty seriously during the summer, so I just played Realm kind of as like my relaxing game, not like my serious game to just play with my friends. But as the summer ended, I started taking it more seriously, and I basically I begged Arrow, because I actually know Arrow from Overwatch, for anyone that doesn't know.
Okay.
I begged him to try it with me, but he was like, "Oh no, man, I don't really like battle royale games." I was like, "Nah, come on, man, it feels like Overwatch. You got to give it a try." So that's how Arrow started playing. Fun fact, if you didn't know.
So you introduced Arrow to the game, and like, so did you guys play on the same team then in Overwatch, or like you just like did pickup games together or something?
Well, we played on the same team. I met Arrow originally about 2.5 years ago in Overwatch because we played on the same team, and we just remained friends for a while. That team didn't last forever, obviously, so we were just friends, not teaming for a long time. And then over the summer, actually, when I was just talking about, I was playing on another team with Arrow before we started playing Realm together.
Nice. So like what brought you guys over to Realm? Like, I mean, is it fair to say this is your main game now?
Yeah, I would definitely say so.
Yeah, like what gave you guys that like push to like come on over and make this the actual game? Did you guys didn't play in the 10Ks or anything, right? Because you guys started like late July, or well, you said you started before.
Right. No, didn't play in the tournaments or anything. Really didn't start getting into it until when they started drastically changing everything, honestly, when they like originally had removed classes. That's when Arrow and I got really into playing. So we definitely missed the 10K tournaments and everything. But we're both very competitive people, and we work well together, obviously. So when we heard that there were going to be community tournaments, we jumped right on that and started playing them.
Nice. Well, that's cool. I mean, that's when Lee and I started playing the game too. So, but it's kind of neat to see so many people that are coming over from other games to start playing Realm Royale in a more competitive sense. And they're obviously carrying some of the success, from their other games. They're carrying that over, whether that's like CSGO or whether that's, Overwatch, or whether that's, PUBG or something else. You see a lot of people coming over to Realm Royale that are bringing some experience with them, which is really cool. But yeah, that's pretty neat. Well, tonight I kind of want to talk some more about the competitive scene. We have like a loose outline there on the side that we'll talk about briefly, but you and Arrow have had a lot of success in the Realm community tournaments and have been kind of known as like two of the top contenders. Whenever there's a tournament coming out, people are like, if they can do well against you guys, or essentially you guys are sort of right now, especially on the top. How many of those tournaments have you guys won? Because you've won a couple, right?
I couldn't tell you the exact number, but we have won a few squad tournaments as well with Raisin and Giant.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. You guys are on the Goon squad, right?
The Goon Squad, that's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've won a few duos. You know, at first when the tournaments first started, we definitely weren't doing as well as we wanted to in the tournaments. But we think that the reason Arrow and I work well together is we're not afraid to like, you know, when we lose, like we break it down, like what could we have done better? Like we're not afraid to be like, yo, man, you need to do this different, or like you need to do this better.
Yeah.
So it's easy for us to improve because we can both take criticism. So after a few rough starts in the tournaments, we definitely started gaining our footing and being way more consistent, and we're able to win a few of the duos. But
Yeah.
I don't know the exact number.
Well, it's like, I mean, you guys have like a pretty good synergy, which is interesting. I mean, like, and to the point, you've probably won more than you could even remember just because you won, you know, that many. But you guys have like a unique synergy as a team because when you watch each other play, like you play very well off of each other, you know. So, and I've listened into some of your streams, you know, back when you guys were streaming scrims, and just hearing some of the comm being like, where you guys, not like during the match or anything, but after a match or something, you guys, you know, verbatim start talking about like, oh, well, we should do this separately. Like, we should do this differently. And you have like you said, that humility to just be able to receive criticism, but also you have that relationship where you two can talk to each other in that way without, you know, getting all like salty about it, you know, or at least that was what I saw from the outside. So,
Right. Exactly.
yeah, which is great. Like, and that's one of the things that I love about like listening to other people who play this on a competitive level is to say like what's going on in their headspace when they're playing against other people. Like, you know, what kind of comms are they having? Like, not just like how they're playing, but also listening to like what's the mentality, you know, on the game, and how are they keeping their headspace during these matches, especially when they lose a fight. You know, when you lose a matchup, like what could we have done differently there to help improve that? So that's always what I enjoy listening to whenever I watch you guys or hear you guys play. So
Right.
but well, tonight I want to do like a real brief discussion. Lee, are you good with that? We're going to do a real brief discussion on new patch, talking about weapons, pots, like battle pass. Like, it'll be very short, and then we're really going to get into the nitty-gritty tonight, talking about you know, why grind Realm Royale. And this sort of came about, the topic kind of came about. What was that?
I said I know where this is going.
Yeah, like the topic kind of came about after Lee and I played in a scrim one night. Like, Lee and I have been pretty busy lately, and so our schedules hasn't. We used to play a lot together, but our schedules just haven't been able to line up. But we had one night where we're like, well, let's jump into some scrims, and so we did. And Lee and I normally duo together, or have been doing together for a while, but you know, coming from players that, you know, we're more like what I would call like we don't consider ourselves like top tier players, but maybe we're like a little bit above average. Is that fair, Lee?
I don't know, man. I can't. Not with Dave Pat, I can't say that confidently.
Oh my god.
Maybe nowadays we're a little above average.
We're above average scrubs. Like,
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. All
I
right.
qualify it.
Yeah. So sorry if I broke everyone's eardrums there. But yeah, like we're like a little bit above average, right? And so we're like just like checking out this competitive scene to see what it's like. And after that night, we sat down and we talked about like, well, what, you know, what, like why are we scrimming? Like, what's the point? And so I want to get into that later on in the show. Because we talked about it some, and we're like, this is really good. Like, we should discuss this on the podcast because it's a good question to ask yourself, especially with Realm Royale and the history that it has been. But before we get into all that, we're going to talk briefly about the patch, because the latest patch came out last week with the new battle pass. There's been some changes. It's not something super like hot, but there's just a little bit to talk about. So Jeff, what are your initial thoughts on the new patch? Do you like the new patch?
For the most part, yeah, I definitely like the new patch. You know, I was a little disappointed with how there's been the issue with the Warriors throwing axe that doesn't make any sound, which is obviously a pretty big problem, but they just announced that they will be fixing that tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that's good news. Other than that, I mean, they improved a few things. There was the minor fit. There wasn't a lot of balance changes or anything like that, except for a minor nerf to the throwing axe, which I think was warranted, so that's all right.
Yeah.
Um,
And it seems
other
like,
than that-
sorry,
ahead.
didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to say that it seems like a lot of the feedback that the community was giving them based on the initial patch, what was, is this one's patch 16, right? Last one was patch 15?
No,
I
I
think
believe we're
it's
on 17 right now.
Oh, are we? Okay, so last one was 16, this one's 17. It seemed like a lot of the feedback was, received, and because people were kind of complaining about how strong axes were with the refire rate as well as how much damage they were doing, particularly fire axe. So, it seemed like a lot of the hot fixes and balance stuff that they made was, related to community feedback, which is good. Um,
Right, I agree, definitely.
yeah.
I'm really hoping that one thing that drastically needs to be nerfed is the revive time rune, because as I'm sure everyone's aware right now, if you have the incubation talent and the revive time rune, then it only takes 5 seconds to be revived. So I'm really hoping that the next patch they handle that problem. But
Yeah. Well, and that was some things that we talked about in the last podcast with Hodsik, and a point that he brings up that I think is really like good. Like I think there are times where criticism of Realm Royale is needed, but then there's times where criticism of Realm Royale is just like meme-ish, like where it's like that doesn't have any value, like that holds no value to make blanket statements. But his input was that runes are difficult to balance and they're difficult to play against because you don't know what your other opponent has. And in particular, like you said, the revive time rune is very like it feels bad to play against, right?
yeah, I agree. I'm not really a huge fan of runes in general because it's RNG and some of them are incredibly powerful and make a very large difference. For
Yeah.
example, a hunter, if you have a purple bow instead of a gold one, you can't one shot a chicken, right? But if you get a headshot rune, or I mean, sorry, a damage rune, then now you can. So it makes that big of a difference.
Yeah.
In addition, like if you have a gold bow and you get a headshot rune, then you can one shot someone now just because you have that rune.
Yeah.
Shot them. So they
So
really make a big difference.
yeah, Lee, what do you think? Like Lee, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean the same. I thought that kind of where he started, the biggest issue was just silent axes and hammers and stuff. But I don't know if this is placebo, but I felt like the gameplay was a little smoother than I've experienced in the past. Um, but at the same time, I feel like there's always going to be things that they can do to balance. But I also was a little giddy about the fact that they finally brought in Jade Tiger recently. And so that was like honestly like, and now there's a giant green blob, so
I saw that.
now I'm gonna have to shell out some more money because that thing looks amazing.
Dude,
even though it's ridiculous.
I couldn't play it just because of the sound effect it makes. It sounds like you're stirring like spaghetti sauce or something. Like it just like makes this gross slopping sound. It just I can't. Like I just can't. So
I really like what they did with the potion that makes your head big though, because it's hopefully
that was
gonna
funny.
make it easier for me to hit headshots. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah.
Yeah.
I felt like the additions they did for today at least were just kind of fun.
Yeah.
Kind of a good relief, like a little bit like of a kind of chill. This is a goofy thing. Don't stress out and have fun. It kind of it made it a little bit more fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and like that's always good. The new patches, High Res always has done a great job with increasing quality of life in the game, like skins, mounts, sound effects. I like the new potion animation, which is cool. That you actually like drink the potion and then throw it away. Like they didn't have that before, so that's kind of nice.
Right.
Like these are all small things to me in my mind. Like I don't mind playing a scuff looking game sometimes. Like I prefer like performance over like the RGB,
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Like, I still would love to see some improvements like Lee you said, like frame rate, like the ground effects being like smoother, like being able to peek and move around objects without getting hung up on floating pixels,
Yeah, I completely agree
thing.
with you. You said those are like little things or whatever, but
Yeah.
honestly, I think all along what this game has needed from the beginning was the little things like that.
Yeah.
Like the developers keep like overhauling the entire game and completely changing like the core of the game, but it's like that's what people like about the game. But what they really need to do, in my opinion, is really start tackling those bugs and those little things. Like you said, there's so many spots in the game that I can think of where you try to shoot someone that you have clear vision on, but you're hitting invisible objects with your bullets.
Yeah.
It's very, very frustrating.
Yes.
On top of that, it's like, I have a really good PC. I have a really good, GPU, CPU, and everything. But the game, whenever you like enter a new zone, or even if you're just standing still, I hate to reveal a pretty big secret. I don't know. Most people probably know this already, but if you're in an area and suddenly your game starts stuttering, even though you're not moving, that probably means that other people have just entered the area that you're in.
Yeah.
Like, I really hate that.
Yeah.
So I really wish they would, improve the performance of like just all the little bugs and performance problems. So I agree
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah.
100% agree.
And there's things where it's like, so for example, like I don't feel like, even though it's horrible and even though I don't like it, like the silent axe bug when they release a new patch, like stuff like that really frustrates players. But to me, I don't
I
get
agree.
I don't get so hung up on those bugs as much as I get like, whereas we went like a whole 3 to 4 weeks with PS4 players not being able to group up or things like that. Like those are like game breaking bugs in my opinion. Whereas these like little like smaller, like I would consider the axe bug a smaller bug in my opinion. That's something that's like when they release new content, they're going to have to deal with like T-pose, like they're going to deal with T-pose. They're going to deal with these small things, consistently, and then they'll hot fix it. And hopefully they continue to hot fix it quickly, which they have been doing overall. But for me, it's like, that's really what I want is more polish in this game. And Jay Nash talked about this, like a little bit in some question and answer things they did, is that they're going to continue to offer improvement on how the game's going to function, with, lessening subpixels and making the game smoother. Each patch that's released, they want it to become smoother and smoother. And so I hope that they stick to that. And I hope that's true. New skins are great. New weapons are great. Like continuing to tweak like the talent system and talents and things like that. Like I get hyped about that. But for me, it's like I really just want the game to play better. Like I want to be able to play the game and not be frustrated at things that are outside of my control. Like, getting caught up in pixels or not being able to shoot through a tree in certain spots, like those kinds of things.
Exactly.
Or at least keep it consistent. If you can't shoot through a tree, then make it so you can't shoot through any trees, not just certain trees, like those kinds of things. So,
Right. Speaking, another good example of what you're talking about there is, I feel it's very inconsistent where you can and cannot climb up certain, mountains or cliffs,
yeah.
and that's very frustrating in my opinion. I think
Like
they
Valley
need
and
to go
Coldness, especially.
through. Yep. Definitely.
I know what hill you're talking about. There's a very specific path, like right outside Cold Mist. Whenever the fog's coming, I always have to climb that hill, and I'm like, I better find this line, because if the if the fog's like right behind me, I'm gonna get hung up on this mountain pass, and I can't get over. Yeah. So.
Right.
But
Also touching back on what you were saying, I really do also just like the quality of life and little polishes, which they have been doing, I really like the changing of like the potion models to distinguish them, and then as you mentioned, the different animation. Like I love just any little thing like that,
Yeah. I mean, it like the game, if you look at what the game was on launch versus what the game looks like now, like a lot of people don't remember what it was like on launch. It was so scuff on launch. Like if you even look at the mounts on launch, it was like, like the movement, everything was super scuff on launch. Like, so people should go back and look up the YouTube. And if you want, look up Dr. Disrespect plays Realm Royale and be like, whoa, that's what the game used to be like. Like it's come a long way since then. So,
Yep.
But
Like the UI especially.
yes, the UI especially.
yeah, all the icons and everything. And also, I was gonna say with running up mountains, you used to be able to run up anything. It would just take you a long time.
Right, yeah.
So funny. I
Yeah.
actually loved that about the game, but I understand why they got rid of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, this latest patch, brought just a little bit out. Not a whole lot. I'm just going to do a brief overview of some of the stuff. The biggest thing was they added a new weapon, which was like a minigun. Very inconsequential. I was a little nervous at first that it was going to be overpowered, but it seems like it's in a healthy, balanced state. Honestly, probably not even worth picking up over class weapons. Or definitely not worth picking up over class weapons. But it's just like a little thing for people if they like trying varieties of weapons out. The biggest thing for... Go ahead, Lee.
Oh no, I was gonna say it's fun.
It is fun.
Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt, sorry to interrupt.
No, it's just a little it's a little fun thing they threw in the game. Like people keep saying that they're catering more towards casual players, I think maybe that's fair. Like, that's probably fair to say because the last like 4 or 5 weapons they've added are all like, hit scan, AR style weapons. So maybe that's fair. I think the biggest thing that they did this last patch was increase the pot drop chance, which apparently was bugged and I didn't know it, but it did feel like I was getting more pots. So they changed the chance of drop getting pots out of a chest to be 50-50 between armor pots and health pots.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, playing this patch, I was skeptical that they changed it at all, and it turns out I was right. Because they said that they're fixing it tomorrow.
Yes,
Which
yeah.
is good, because I was like, if this is the increased drop chance, then we're in trouble.
Yeah. And
But it wasn't, so.
I don't know what spurred on that change because for a while they're like, we like where armor pots are at, but everyone in the community is like, we need more armor pots. Like the time to kill is too fast without armor, and it just feels bad not getting the armor you need when you fight so often. So that was a good change, and then you had the battle pass, but we talked a little bit about what needs improved still, like with runes. 5 second chicken, I agree with you, is just, I don't like it and I don't think it should be in the game. So I don't know, like that's pretty much my like TLDR of patch 17. So do you guys have any other thoughts before we move on and talk about tonight's topic?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on the armor potions, like you were saying. It definitely feels horrible to have to sacrifice it. Like you're getting punished for fighting people when you
Yeah.
don't have enough armor.
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel good. So if everyone has more armor and you win a fight, then the people you killed should be able to drop some for you, which definitely, rewards fighting as opposed to punishing.
Yeah, there should
So,
be like
I really like that.
a very what's the word, like the potion economy should reward you for taking a higher risk, right?
Agreed, yeah.
Yeah, so like in all BRs, like they sort of like revolve around certain principles that it's like more skilled and more intelligent players should be rewarded for having that level of gameplay, right? So if you're higher skilled and you make good decisions, then you should be rewarded for that. um and again, that's out of performance. That's not based on like overall skill. Like, even good players choke fights. So like if you go into a fight and you play well and you make intelligent decisions, then you should be rewarded for that, as opposed to the alternative of that would be to play a little bit more passively. But you take a risk every single time you fight. You take a risk of getting third partied. You take a risk at dying. You take a risk at losing the game. So there are a lot of risks you're taking just by engaging in a fight. So if you win a fight, you should be rewarded, and not just in getting new loot, but in like making sure you're accumulating all the resources you could potentially need in order to win the game. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Couldn't have said it better.
yeah. So I don't know. Like I hope they continue to do that because I hope they continue to reward players for winning fights. Like that's important, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that to me was honestly the biggest. That to me was honestly the biggest change they made this patch, was increasing that. We'll find out more tomorrow when they hotfix that to see what they actually feel like economy wise, like how many armor pots we're getting out of these chests. And the reason that that's such a big increase to the armor and health pot economy is because they made it now so there's at least one chest in each building, which is huge. Like that's also another big thing they did this
That was
last
a
patch.
massive change, yeah.
Yeah. So
Feels way better on drops for sure.
oh, absolutely.
Curious.
Yeah. So, and another thing we didn't touch about also was they buffed like SMG, they buffed AR, and they buffed did they buff the pistol?
I believe
They
it was
nerfed
actually just the AR and the burst rifle that got buffed.
Oh, and the burst
Uh,
rifle. Okay.
Yeah, actually.
Burst rifle was a big one. Burst rifle actually is like okay now. Like it's decent. Like so before these weapons, it was basically like if you dropped and got one of these weapons, you were dead. It like seriously, like if somebody else got a revolver or a slug, that like they were gonna win that fight. Now you actually have somewhat of a fighting chance. You kind of have to outplay a little bit. Those two weapons are still real strong, but at least there's a little bit more balance there. So
Yeah, I still
Yeah.
feel like because of the refire rate of a slug rifle, though, even how consistent it seems like even newer players are with a revolver. I still hate getting a burst rifle. Like, if anything, I play warrior a lot, so if I can get a leap and then try to hit as many headshots as I can with an AR or an SMG, then that's fine. but I still hate getting burst rifles. Like, it doesn't feel like, oh, you know what? I might keep this burst rifle for a while. It's like, nope, get rid of this as soon as possible.
Yeah.
I agree with you there. I honestly went into this patch thinking personally that the burst rifle was actually going to be like a contender to the slug even, but in practice I don't like it at all. It still feels very weak to me.
Yeah.
I know Arrow disagrees, but I don't know. I don't like it. It feels weak to me. Every time I've gotten it in the early game, it just doesn't seem to get the job done for me. But
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this: at least them buffing those to try and close the gap between slug and revolver is okay. Shotgun kind of got nerfed into the ground from the previous patch, from patch 16, with the swap change that they made. Which it was really good before. Gray shotgun in particular was really good before.
I
That's
miss Gray
right.
Shotgun.
Yeah,
there was
dude.
There was a bug with it that I don't know what exactly it did, but it made the spread more consistent or something.
Yeah,
But
it was
either
like
way,
more condensed, I guess.
yeah, I mean, I was talking with this or talking to Arrow about that too. I felt like what they should have done was made all of the shotguns have that more consistent spread, but then maybe lowered the damage down as compensation. That way the gun was more, consistent, but didn't like hit like a truck.
Yeah, yeah, because it was hitting for like 7, 8, 900. Gray
Yeah.
shotgun early game, like 7. I think it was maybe 800 was the tops. I don't think it hit for 900, but it was like 7, 800 per shot early game if you're like extremely up close. Like it had damage fall off, but they nerfed it into the ground with the swap speed slow.
Yeah, I
Which,
hate that.
yeah, which I don't really like that
I'm
either.
not a fan of that at all.
Yeah, but anyway. But I mean, I agree that they're closing these gap of these like beginner weapons. Like I think at this point in time, if you're a player and you're wanting to win games, dropping and finding a slugger or a revolver early game should be your first priority. And if you don't have one, it's okay to run from fights. I will say I think you can win fights still with the weapons now, whereas before it was kind of like almost don't shoot. Like just run, like period. So
Right.
there's probably a little bit more of an intermediate there, which is fine. I really don't want burst rifle to be as strong as slug, in my opinion. It's a hit scan
Right.
weapon. It's going to be easy to use, easier to hit your shots. So I feel like it's okay for slug and revolver to still be stronger. It just depends on how much that gap narrows. So
Yeah, I agree with you there.
yeah. But anyway, well, let's get back on to the topic that we want to talk about tonight, which is why grind Realm Royale. I think the competitive scene in Realm Royale is really funny because it obviously the game had a ton of success. It dropped off tremendously. They've had a bunch of tournaments. It used to be only PC game. Now it's on console. They're trying to reach, a wider player base, whether that's console players, whether they're on PS4, Xbox, casuals. It's a free to play game. There's going to be casual players. But then they also have this kind of like PC master race that loves competitive games, and a lot of people left for Apex and a lot of people left for other BRs, and the BR genre is very saturated. So I don't know, like it's just an interesting community and an interesting thing to talk about, because it seems like people that love Realm Royale really love Realm Royale. So I don't know. Do you guys have any initial thoughts on that? There kind of was an exodus when Apex came out. Like, what do you guys think of that?
Yeah, I'll
Um,
just. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, sure. It was honestly, oh man, the whole timeline here is really unfortunate because what really happened was so Hi-Rez had announced that they were bringing back the tournaments, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And, that brought a huge influx of players back. For anyone that isn't aware, I'm one of the owners and mods of the Big Scrim Discord that we have, and during that time when they had announced the tournaments, it was on fire. Like there were so many people playing in there. But at pretty much exactly the same time, Hi-Rez announced that they were going to be delaying them, and Apex also came out. Like both of those things happened at like the exact same time,
Yeah.
and man, that was like a meteor strike on Planet Realm that
Yeah.
took out the entire population. That was not good at all.
Well, and Apex kind of blew up. You know what I mean? Like we did a show with Hodsick, who has kind of in a way migrated over to Apex and is focusing that as his main game and trying to make a career of that for himself. So, I give him respect for his decision to do that. But at the same time, a lot of people were on the hype train for Apex, and now it's dwindling. They've lost literally half their player base in March alone. So, or at least numbers. I don't know if their whole player base, but they've lost a lot of viewers on Twitch in
I
the
wasn't
last
aware
month.
of that.
Yeah, yeah, it's been. I mean, when it started, it was like they had how many million, 8 million accounts in 24 hours or something like that. Well, now they've lost a large amount of those players. They weren't able to retain those, and it's been dwindling down significantly. So, I don't know if that's like official. I don't know if that's like an official stat, but that's what people have been discussing lately, especially with Twitch viewership, is that it's dwindled significantly. So I don't know. That's interesting though, because it's like everyone jumped on the hype train. It's still a great game. It's still a good game. I played it and I enjoyed it and still enjoy it. But I also am kind of, have not been playing it near as much after a break from gaming for 3 weeks or so. But we're seeing some people come back to the Realm scene, which is great. A lot of people who are grinding Apex, are coming back now. So, yeah, so that's kind of helped you guys, start your scrims back up a little bit too now, right?
Now that Apex has been kind of dwindling a little, you mean?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, we have been able to get some going. It seems like we only have a decent crowd when Arrow and I are actually playing, though, which I'm not really happy about that because, in our server we have people trying to host them every day. It has been a little tough, I guess just the interest isn't there right now for most people.
Yeah.
But we have been trying to build the hype back up.
Well, and it's funny. I've only been able to play on days that I stream, which is a Saturday and a Monday. Or wait, is it Saturday, Monday? I think maybe it's only been Mondays, and I think you guys have been there both times. So I've seen large turnouts personally, which is nice. But yeah, so you're saying on the other days, on the off days, it's still been somewhat hit or miss depending on who's there, right?
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, which is kind of to be understandable, like to say there's no tournament in sight, so we're not seeing a lot of the larger streamers that have been involved in the competitive scene. Like your Gentle Giant, like your Idiot Mouse, like these guys that really grinded the game and have, invested a large amount of time to make this their main game and try and, go pro or whatever with Realm Royale. A lot of them are kind of been focusing more on streaming and continuing to have a foot in the game, but there's nothing to grind for them,
Right.
So, to them, they're going to wait for a tournament and then come out. I do want to talk about that a little bit though, because I think that's an interesting perspective. This idea of like, I'm going to go pro in a game and that's why I'm playing the game, so I don't want to cast judgment. I have no judgment for people that are doing that. None at all. I just think that's an interesting perspective because for me, it's like if I play a game, I don't necessarily play it with the perspective of like, oh, like I'm only playing this because I have a shot at a career. You know what I mean? Which
Right.
I think a lot of gamers do approach games like that. They look at a game as an opportunity to find a career, not necessarily as a game that they, love or a game that that they play just for fun. They approach it with a totally different mindset. How is that for you guys? Like Jeff, obviously I know that you didn't necessarily care for Apex, and same with Arrow, and you stuck with Realm Royale. Like what like kept that decision? Like what was going through your head in that and made you make that decision?
So, when it comes to what you're discussing, like playing a game, looking for a career or whatever, I definitely wouldn't consider myself to be someone like that. I think what it comes down to more for me is, I have to play a game that I genuinely enjoy playing.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I'm really not a fan of the BR genre at all. It's just something about Realm that sticks out that works for me. I've tried some of the other BRs, like I tried Apex, and it's a good game. Like, don't get me wrong, I just not into it or into the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like the thing that makes Realm different, in my opinion, is it feels like there's always a reason to just keep moving and you get rewarded for killing people because you could forge your items and get stronger and you want to keep moving and fighting, and there's not really a risk of instantly dying to something silly. I mean, sure, something can happen, but the TTK is slow and there's room for like smart outplays, and
Mm-hmm.
it's all about using your abilities properly and things like that. And I I really enjoy that. That's why I like Realm. So, I'm not looking to play it to find a career. Sure, I'd love to, if, the tournaments come back, I'd love to somehow be a pro gamer or whatever, but I'm not playing with that as my only goal. It's
Yeah.
really just for enjoyment. And I'm naturally a competitive person.
Yeah.
So just, that's what's going on there, I guess.
Cool. Lee, you just dropped a cool fact in chat. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. No, I was just I just looked at Steam charts because you mentioned it. And
Yeah.
after the whole debacle with the huge influx of people, and then Realm drops a bunch of updates that people hate, and then everyone just pieced out. Realm actually never was able to get anywhere near its and it still hasn't gotten near its initial success, but it was able to get to 10K after about almost 10.5K after about 6 months of just nothing. And it was during the time that they were finally pushing updates that people liked. There was an increase in interest again. People were starting to come back and play, and it just went up like a lot. And then after Apex's release, it's been averaging about 5.7K. And it's only been a few months, but it literally went from slowly increasing to getting cut in half. And I think it's hovered around there for a while, which is nice. But even the daily averages have dropped by 3,000 or so players.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of
And
unfortunate.
that's just Steam charts alone. Just so everyone knows, that's only Steam charts. So that does not include console players or anything else like that. So
correct. Yeah, and if I had to guess, I'm sure consoles like still doing really well.
yeah, console's fine.
Yeah, it seems to be really, and a lot of these changes, as we've talked about in previous podcasts, really seem aimed towards console players. Stuff like the Gatekeeper, automatic rifles, and stuff like that probably feel much more doable, because even some of these class weapons, like I've watched even good players try to play with a controller, and it's just really hard to aim.
Yeah.
With the hitboxes.
Yeah.
But just to go back, I don't want to take it too far back, but just to go back a point or two. A lot of this discussion, as Monty mentioned, was because of a conversation I had with Monty during scrims, and I want to also plug, if you guys call into the Discord, which we'll probably link multiple times throughout the course of the rest of this, but go to the Discord, and if you guys have thoughts on this topic, please call in, and we'll drag you in, and you can ask directly, or if you want to just give your thoughts. But the conversation started during the scrims because I went, look, Monty, does this feel the same? And yes, I'm looking at you, Raisin. I'm looking at you, even you, Steady Flubbin. Does this feel the same to you? Do you still feel as I don't know, motivated? Like, what motivates you? And the reason why I brought that up was because for me, the motivation was, people like Raisin and even Days and Arrow, and Raisin and Giant, their duo team, like everyone who's playing Realm still plays, I think, to this day, because number one, the game is really fun, but number two, the community is really strong, and it has been strong for a long time. And during that whole situation where people started quitting Realm, those people stuck around, and they're like, you know what? Yeah, the game's not in its best state it's ever been in. There's a lot of changes I want, but I still really love Realm. And that's when I feel like, Monty, you and I got really, started really grinding. And it was, around this really cool community. Stream sniping was really easy because queue times were all over the place, and it was really easy to just, if you were within 30 seconds of someone queuing, you could get in a game with them. And so it was fun to try to beat your favorite player, which would never happen because we were trash, and we still are. But it was just super fun to do that. And then, as much as I'm against hype trains, which is, it was partly why I played Realm, is because it wasn't very hyped up when I started playing. It was actually on the downslope. But when Apex hit, everyone went to Apex. The streamers were thinking, oh, this would be best for my streaming career, maybe, or they just really like the game, which I don't doubt at all either. But then the people who I looked up to stopped playing Realm, and so I was just kind of like, oh man. And obviously Realm was still being streamed by Arrow a lot, which was cool, and Mouse stuck around, but it just didn't feel the same. And even though there have been people kind of trickling back in, it still seems like there's a little bit of like a kind of like I hate to say it, but like almost like a grouchiness to some of the people who are just kind of like, yeah, I'm back. I still like this game. I played Apex for a while, but I still love Realm. But but at the same time, they're like, but I'm, you know, anyway. So sorry for that long thought process, but I wanted to encourage people to talk about it as well. That was my experience. So we were playing these scrims, and I was like, we were dying to Arrow and Days a lot, which was fun and humbling, and we still really looked up to them. But even just going on Steam and seeing like, no offense to newer players, I love newer players, but like I don't care if I kill Mr. AB125. I don't know if this guy's on Xbox. I don't even know, but like it would have been really cool if I ran into Gentle Giant and killed Gentle Giant, though. You know what I mean? Like that was kind of like my thinking. Was that there were a lot of newer players, which is cool, but I was really looking forward to one day maybe killing Little Raisin. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, I feel like the community is like the number one best thing about this game. Like the Q snipes and the interaction in the stream is so much fun. I love, when the streamers do that. And
Yeah.
if people, I feel bad for people that don't even like follow the streamers, because I think that, like the big streamers like Arrow, Mouse, Crip, and Giant, and them really make this game in a way and keep it going. Like if it'd be hard to play without them sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
honestly.
I mean, okay, so if I'm gonna be like 1,000% honest, that was a lot of the reason why I came back to Realm Royale is because I saw some people starting to play it again. Like the Twitch community is a very tight knit community. You have certain streamers that are playing it, and I don't necessarily love the whole solo squads thing. So I'm glad that's sort of dead. Because I'll just be honest, like I didn't really like it. It's still somewhat alive, but I'm glad it's sort of dead because it didn't have the interaction that you could with some of your streamers where you would see them in game. It's like everyone was going solo squads, and now all of a sudden it's like I don't want to play solo squads. Personally, I didn't want to, but it's like I
I'm not good
enjoy.
enough for solo squads.
Yeah.
I just die too easily in solo squad.
But it was like I enjoyed like running into people that were good in the game as well, and it seems like that's kind of revitalized solos a little bit, which is a good thing for the game in my opinion. Like solos and duos, where you would run into players that are good that you could play against, and that's been the biggest issue for Realm Royale. Is the whole reason we have to scrim in the first place is so that you can stack lobbies and run into people that are like, that are like really good players. So I don't know, like I think that's a really like intriguing point is that it's like the community is what's kind of holding this essentially together, especially on Twitch and for PC players.
Yeah, and just to clarify too, like obviously you could ask the question, well, how do you not have the motivation because there's scrims and like you could really see how you stack up against really good people.
Yeah.
But I thought there was something to be said of the being able to casually run into someone who you looked up to, who, wasn't playing super whatever, super sweaty. It wasn't a group of people who were like super serious, like, all right, guys, we're going to get in this voice chat. We're going to queue up. It's going to be super official, which is awesome. And it makes it really easy to do the scrims. Like it's something a little different, a little like not as, I guess for me, it wasn't as enjoyable of an experience as just like, oh, I'm gonna tune into this guy's stream. He's been streaming for however long. I'm gonna try sniping him. This will be super, So just to make the distinction there, because yeah, I could still go into scrims and get destroyed by Arrow and Days all day, and it would be fun, but in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know, Jeff. Do you have any thoughts on that? Did we lose you, Jeff?
Hello.
Hey.
Hey.
I must have been muted.
Oh.
Sorry, could you repeat?
I was just, yeah, we were just talking about the community and how like jumping in the Twitch community is kind of holding it together. So being able to queue snipe people and being able to stack lobbies, has been really beneficial for the community.
Right.
So like, how has that been for you, and how has that been versus like, official scrims? Like, do you feel like official scrims are a little more like, I don't know, intimidating for players, instead of in essence queue sniping, or instead of right. Jumping into a stacked lobby or casually just running into somebody who's a really good player,
Yeah, I never really considered the intimidation factor, honestly, until you brought that up. But that might honestly be a concern. I never thought about that. But I definitely really do love the Q snipes.
Yeah.
Basically Arrow got known because of that. He would snipe like Giant and
Hmm.
Mouse and Crip and all them, and he would always, he would kill them all the time. And he started to get a name for himself. And everyone convinced him, like, dude, you gotta start streaming. Like I helped him, or I helped convince him to. And just like that, he blew up because everyone already knew who he was just from that.
Yeah.
Um, and it's definitely a lot of fun. Like someone said in the chat, it's basically like an unofficial scrim, because it's a lot of people want to just have a taste of competitive, because sometimes it could get boring playing just against bots and stuff. But I definitely think that the community does hold the game together, because even though some of the changes that the developers make can be pretty frustrating sometimes, if there's so many great people here to interact with, that it definitely keeps me coming back. Like I don't play solos very often, but when I do, it's definitely Q sniping someone.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's hard for a lot of these players that are really, really good. Like you have some players that are super good at this game where it's just too easy for them right now. Like unless they're going up against a stacked lobby, it's too easy. And even sometimes when they're going up against a stacked lobby, it's still too easy. So like, you've got a wide array of skill levels, and the game is lacking some competition for some of those players that have been grinding for a long time or are in an elite class of gamer. You know, so I sympathize with that. I don't consider myself to be in that elite class. I do win frequently, but there's a level where it's like, there are some very, very good players in this game, and I could see why they would get bored, not having the competition that they need or that they seek, Um, so, but yeah, I don't know, man. I think that's an interesting discussion point, though, to talk about that. And I think that's a need that high-res should address. I really do. I think that there's an element here where people are talking about why do they keep catering to the casual player. I understand why they're catering to the casual player. They want their game to continue to have a healthy community, and then they want to add more polish, and then they will probably address some of those other things. I personally still believe tournaments will come back. I think they've been working on trying to find an iteration of the game before they start offering these tournaments. They want to offer a tournament, and I guarantee you, I'm sorry, I'm just going to call it out now. I guarantee you, as soon as they announce a tournament, there's going to be a huge influx of PC players. I'm just saying, like, if they have money on it, there's going to be a massive influx of PC players.
And I would love to see that happen. Like,
Yeah.
because that's exactly what happened when they, like I said earlier, they announced the tournaments, and wow,
Yeah.
a lot of people came in.
It went from what? Like, we hit, like, I think December was like 4K players, right? 4, maybe 5K players. They announced the tournaments in January, and from January to February it went up to 10K. It doubled the PC player base on Steam simply from saying we're going to have an open tournament for people where they can qualify. And the funny thing was, in that format of the tournament, it wasn't even like guaranteed that you would get in to a game. And it still doubled the player base because it was an open format. It was like queue at this time and hopefully you get selected. We're going to host. Like, the format was terrible. Like, it was. I'll acknowledge that. It was a terrible format. But, it was like, and all of a sudden they still doubled their player base. So, I don't know, man. Like, I'm just saying they're trying to find an iteration of the game where they can retain players and where they can offer something that is sustainable, not just like a, hey, come for this tournament and then dip, and then chase the next big thing. They're trying to find sustainable things because they know they have gold here, and they really do have gold, in my opinion, with how the game plays and the fighting sequences. That's why I'm playing this instead of Apex. I think the fighting in this game is more fun to me than the fighting is in Apex. I think Apex is fun, but it just doesn't have what this game has, at least for me personally. So I don't know, but sorry, that's my rant.
No, that's good, and I think it's a good point because, to be fair, Monty and I have kind of industry experience with like developing and designing and all that stuff, which is, in a game it's almost the same thing. And I feel like they're just in a position now where there's a bit of damage control going on, so they're trying to balance, these content type things which bring in money, and then the tournament and competitive scene, which will bring in more loyalty, I think are kind of the two things that they're trying to balance. Because as of late, it's really kind of a situation that is best for newer players and people who are more casual, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And as much as they probably want to do the competitive stuff, they're in an awkward position where, you know, they have to be able to fund it. They have to be able to, especially considering how many people are playing Apex and the huge success there. There's probably a lot of pressure to try to attract some of those people back somehow. Even the casual players who went to Apex, because I would say even a lot of my casual friends who weren't, not to be mean, they weren't even very good at Realm, went to play Apex just because that's what everyone was doing. So
yeah,
it's just a weird, awkward balance phase. And I do think that there's also just a natural life cycle of games. And, there are games that I played 5 years ago that I wouldn't even touch today because they're just not as fun to me anymore. And I do think that some people might have even hit that. And so, yeah, they'd come back for a tournament, but I kind of understand more now why they're just like, well, I'm over like 1,500, 2,000 hours in the game, and it's just not as fun for me anymore. And I guess I have a hard time like accepting that.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I'm like, come back.
I mean, that's fair though, dude. Like, that is fair.
Yeah, we had been talking, or you had mentioned earlier, Monty, talking about how, it seems like Realm is catering a lot to like casual players, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely true, mainly because, the Steam charts and everything, that's only tracking PC players. But as far as I know, the console, like once they started really releasing the console beta and everything and made it open for everyone, there's a lot more console players than there are PC players. As far as as last I heard, there was like a lot of console players.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's really what they're trying to focus on, is the console players, which is okay with me. I mean, a lot of the changes kind of reflect that too, like with the automatic weapons you were saying,
Yeah.
and how they had that patch where they like increased the fire rate of pretty much every weapon in the game.
Yeah.
I think that was to cater to the console players also. So I definitely think that is the direction they're taking now. But what's weird is, I think when this game first came out, they were specifically kind of targeting competitive like tournament players.
Yeah, they were. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I
like,
agree.
right out the gate, they wanted to do tournaments and everything, just straight up. That's what they were going for. Maybe they realized that that wasn't retaining players like they wanted, so they started, introducing casual changes. But unfortunately, that's what drove away all those competitive people.
Yeah.
So they definitely have been struggling with kind of figuring out what they want to be, but I would definitely agree that they are taking more of a casual route right now,
Yeah.
which is okay, in my opinion.
I think it's okay for where the game is at in its life cycle. You know what I mean? Like, hopefully at the end of its maturity, upon full release, which, I've had other rants about how a game can be in pre-release for like a year and a half or something. But once it hits its like full release, which again, I think when that happens, they're going to announce a Nintendo Switch, because what a lot of people don't realize is that you can't have an open beta game in a Nintendo shop. So like Nintendo won't allow like an unfinished game in their shop. So
Right.
So people have been asking for Switch. When's it coming to Switch? Well, it'll come to Switch whenever the game is out of beta. So whenever Hi-Rez determines that the game is ready to be out of beta, then they'll put it on Switch. So you're going to add another console there, and I do think that will increase, again, another element of casual gamer to Realm Royale, where people can play the game on the Switch now. That's not going to be for a competitive player. That's going to be for a casual player. So someone who's laying in their bed at night while their wife is sleeping, they're going to be playing Realm Royale. Okay, like that's like legit. Like that's what it's going to be. So yeah. So no way, dude. I'll be down here. She'll be asleep upstairs, and I'll be like hitting it hardcore in scrims. Okay.
Well,
no.
You could have used some better words there, man.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Get your mind out of the gutter, Lee. Okay. Anyway. But no, like there's an element there where it's like they're gonna have some more casual things here, so they want to make sure the game is prepped for that, so. But I also think that whenever the game is in full release, they're probably gonna want to have an element of increased player base, period. So whether or not that's announcing a tournament, bringing in a large number of PC players, and then removing bots or something like that. I don't know. I'm just guessing, but that could be one thing that they're thinking about and having in the back of their mind. So those are all elements of where the game is at in its maturity life cycle, and hopefully, it continues to progress, and there's something for all players, upon open release for the game, including those that are of the PC elite and want to play this in a competitive sense. So, because I think that there's a level of the only real competitive BR game out there right now. I think PUBG is probably up there, as well as Fortnite, for competitive, but a lot of people, Fortnite's just like a niche thing. Like, people really like it casually, but there's a very like I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm in like a bubble, but I don't look at Fortnite and I'm like, yeah, I want to watch competitive Fortnite. Like, I just don't care. Like, I don't know.
Right. I don't blame you.
Yeah, yeah. So, when I look at competitive BRs, I look at like PUBG, which again is missing an element from, Realm Royale. And Apex. Okay, like, I'm gonna start talking smack again, because with Apex, everyone that switched over from Realm Royale to Apex, and I'm just gonna call you out, everyone who switched out from, or a lot of people, okay, who switched from Realm Royale to Apex, was like kind of treating Realm like a meme, like saying all this stuff on their streams or whatever, talking about how
Steady flipping.
yeah, talking about how much of a meme Realm Royale is, in the hopes that Apex was going to release this, competitive scene as an esport and all this stuff, which I think they still may do. But you look at how long the game's been out now. The game's been out 3-4 months. They had a huge influx of player base, and they haven't had a single private server tournament yet. Not a single one. Everything that they do is pub stomp or Q snipes. So I'm sorry, you have 8 million players, you have 8 million accounts, and you still can't have a private server? Like, you can't even look at Realm Royale and be like, Realm Royale's a meme. No, dude, you're grinding for no reason. Like, don't tell us, like, why grind Realm Royale? Well, Apex has a competitive scene. No, Apex has zero competitive scene. It's pub stomp. You're pub stomping. That's not competitive. Like, that's as random as farming bots. I'm sorry, but that's true.
And I don't want to, like, this is the same topic. It's going to sound like a non sequitur, but it's not. I think because of the success of Apex as well, and because of the saturation of BRs, we might even be entering into like a newer era of games where some other game type is going to come out that's not battle royale related at all. And I don't think it's going to like blow up the same way that these BRs have, but
yeah,
I'm starting to hear a common sentiment of like BRs themselves becoming a meme, like, because they're fun and they're serving their purpose, but like if you think about it, 10 years ago MMOs were like the game that everyone played. I mean, there was always shooters, but I think there's a possibility that within the next who knows 5+ years, BRs might not even be top of this Twitch charts, but we'll see. Because Fortnite has been around for such a long time, and it's been successful for a couple of years, like pretty successful, and now Apex has taken the world by storm, and I feel like people are starting to get, I wouldn't say bored, but like starting to get oversaturated with BR content.
No, I completely agree with that, because there's been, what is it? The Division came out, and then there's another Blackout changed and added some new content. They added some maps, which I don't even know how Blackout's still a game with Apex Legends around. Like, PUBG is still thriving, especially in China and other scenes, and they still have a large competitive community. Again, somehow, I don't know. It's not my thing. What else? There's another recent BR that was just released, right? I think last week there was another BR release. Hold on, I have to look it up. Maybe it was just the Division, but I could be wrong, because I feel like the Division hasn't been out that long. Maybe it was like closed beta where people were streaming it. But
yeah, but even the fact that you can name that many, because I remember Ring of Elysium looked like it had a little spark of hope.
Oh, Ring of Elysium, that was another one. I totally forgot about that, dude.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
yeah,
what? People were like, you need to play ROE, man. It's so much better than Realm. And this is before they even started pushing those fixes with the patches that people started coming back to before they announced the tournaments.
Yeah, and then you guys remember Battle Rights Royale? Battle Right introduced their
Battle
Royale.
Right?
There's,
Someone brought up Spellbreak.
There's so many. Spellbreak's another one. Like, people just were literally releasing like BRs left and right. So I don't know. Like, it's just interesting. But I do agree with the fact that you're saying that the genre is very, saturated. So I don't know, but yeah. Do you guys have any more thoughts on what we've been talking about, or do you guys ready to move on? We can talk more about motivation and kind of what leads us into wanting to play Realm. Do you guys want to do that?
I guess the only thing I would want to add is that I personally do hope that the VR trend dies down because I just want something else to come out.
Yeah, yeah, and there was a good point that somebody made. Is it's like, Lee said, Lee said that there's people that have been grinding the game for 2,000 hours, want like over 1,500 hours or more into this game, and it's like, of course, people are going to get like tired of that. Like you
Right.
do need to have like other games that you play, like whether that's Apex or whether that's another game. Having a secondary game is fine. There's nothing wrong with being a little burnout and needing to take a break.
Agreed, yeah.
But I do. A part of me also likes to stand up for Realm Royale and just be like, people are like, I can't play Realm. I love Realm, but I can't play Realm because there's no reason for me to play Realm. And that's what I want to talk about, is because I think it's interesting for people to say that. Like, I think that's an interesting point, because I literally have never approached a video game that way. And I've never approached any sport that way, personally.
It's true. That is true.
And I've played soccer. I played collegiate soccer. I played rugby. I've been an athlete my entire life. That's why I'm a competitive person, and that's why I love video games. But I've never been like, I'm going to stop playing soccer because I'm not going pro. Like, which is interesting to me that now that we have video games, there's this whole element of I should continue to play a video game or not play a video game because I'm not going to be a pro, So I don't know. What do you guys think of that?
Well, like I had mentioned earlier, that I personally don't really feel that way.
Yeah.
But even though I feel like there hasn't really been a full burnout for me of Realm, there definitely have been times in its lifespan where I've been like, man, like something's got to change, or I don't know how much longer I can keep it up. But for the most part, I do feel like the patches they've been coming out with are usually good and have good changes, and that always kind of like brings me back in a little bit. But I know a lot of people really don't like the bots. That's a big thing, but
Yeah.
it's like I have a love-hate relationship with them, because I don't know if people remember, but when the player base was really low before they introduced bots, they had like a queue timer thing, and that was like a disaster. So something
That
needs
was
to
bad.
be done about that.
Yeah.
So they added the bots, which in a lot of ways helped, because you could always get a game fast. It opened up people in like less populated regions to be able to play and get a game quickly, because Battle Royale is all about, getting a game quick and getting right in there.
Yeah.
So if you can't have that, then the game's just not going to succeed. So I definitely understand why they need to add bots. But then on the other end of the spectrum, it could be really frustrating and just kind of boring sometimes playing, and then you're like waiting for the last fight in the match. You're like getting ready, you have all your stuff, and then it's just a bot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Really unfun.
Absolutely. There's no climax there in terms of progression. When you get to the final fight and then he dies of the fog, that sucks,
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Yeah, it's my sentiments.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, okay. Well, I want to talk real quick about just Lee and I's discussion after our scrims. And then we'll bring in some questions. Okay. So if you guys want to jump in here and ask a question, or even bring in a hot take, if you disagree with some of the stuff we've said tonight, we'd love to hear from you, as long as you're respectful, that is. So feel free to jump in the Discord and ask your question, and we'll try and pull you in. Okay. I know we already have one person that's been waiting patiently, so we'll try and bring them in here in a sec. But initially what brought on this question of why grind Realm Royale, and again, we've been kind of hinting at it all night, is this idea of there's no tournament in sight. What's the point of playing in a competitive setting with this game? Like, maybe you should just approach it as a casual. And there's a level of where Lee and I that night after scrims were talking, because Lee asked that question. And to be fair, Lee, I don't know if your motivation was just, I don't necessarily, for you personally, if you were just like, I don't necessarily know if I want to like do scrims. Like, is that a fair assessment of like what you were saying or thinking, or how, like what brought that question about?
I think it was more just kind of what I mentioned earlier with having so many of the people I looked up to not playing, and just how there was like even people complaining that a lot of the community tournaments were just, and it's no offense to them because I've actually really enjoyed newer players, but it was like, oh yeah, it was just a bunch of newer players that no one's ever heard of. Um, and yeah, it was just stuff like that. Like, all right, so it feels like the community is in like state of emergency and we're just doing what we can.
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
so it was just more of like, all right, I recognize most of the people in this scrim, this is really cool, but if this is all the people that is left of like the competitive type realm, it just didn't, yeah, it just felt off.
Okay.
But
So you were more
yeah,
like,
yeah, it was just kind of like, yeah, kind of like what I mentioned earlier with the whole, I liked the idea of scrim seemed fun because I'd run into people who I'd also run into in casual games, and it was like, all right, let's see how they are in a serious setting compared to how they are in just like a, I'm just gonna run out and try to kill people and maybe I could kill them then.
Yeah.
You know, like
Right.
I don't know. That's just kind of my thought there. But yeah,
well,
similar to what I said before.
so you were sensing more like the, this is going to sound super weird. You were sensing more like the atmosphere in the community versus like for you personally, like whether or not you enjoy that element of the game. Like, am I interpreting that?
Yeah. That's a good way of summarizing it. Like, it was just kind of like, it wasn't just the scrims themselves, because like I thought it was really cool that I recognized all the people, but then I was just kind of like, it just felt like the end of Infinity War, where you have half of the people in the universe left, and you're like, all right, so we got to work with what we have here. And I was like, I wish it was the way it was before. You know?
You
what I
mean like scrims right now is like B team Avengers? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's the A Team Avengers, man. The other people are the new guys, right? The people who dusted away were the new guys, and it was just kind of like, all right, this makes sense. Not, because like we would never call Arrow and Days B Team,
Well, that's
players.
true. Yeah, no, absolutely. I get that.
But it did feel like, all right, so basically these are the scraps left behind from the wake of Apex snapping its fingers and a bunch of people downloading it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, for me personally, and Jeff, feel free to pipe in anytime, but for me personally, that night when we played, and the funny thing is that night when we played, I think we ran into you and Arrow like 3 times in
yeah, I have memory of that.
Yeah, in Jade, and just got wrecked every single time. But like me personally, when Lee and I were talking about it, it was like, well, why should we be playing scrims? Like, why should we jump in? Why should we do this? Like, I think there still are people that in the community and on Twitch that are doing it. For one, that I do want to fight against. I do want to see in game that are nice people that I hang out in their streams. I participate with them in their stream settings. So like, yeah, I want to fight against them, but also because I'm a competitive person and because I get kind of bored with, like certain game modes, even if I'm not winning them all the time, like I still get bored with it. And I'm like, I want to be playing whether this is like, even if like, let's say they even created, like, let's say scrims had massive amounts of turnout and they created a B tier scrim lobby, I would still do it. Like, I absolutely would still do it, just simply because it provided an experience for me that I don't get when I'm doing just regular duo scrims. Like, so, because Lee and I at least are at a level when we hop in a regular duo, we don't even have to try and we can win. Like I wanted to I wanted to be challenged. I wanted to have an experience where it provides a different experience when you jump into a competitive atmosphere. You have to think harder. You have to be more strategic. You have to like be more cautious. You have to be on your game. Every fight matters. And that's the experience that I look for. So,
yeah,
and I feel the exact same way.
Games, but two different perspectives. Sorry, Days. I was just gonna say it's two different perspectives. I think from two different people who are kind of like normal players and how they've been affected by the wake of the recent situations. But I appreciate your perspective as well. I don't think there's any right or wrong way to think about it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jeff. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say I feel the exact same way that you do. How I'm naturally a competitive person.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're just playing regular queues that aren't like scrims or whatever, it's really not that much of a challenge, honestly. So, I love to be challenged. I love to improve as a player in whatever game I'm playing in any way I can. And, I feel like the best way to do that, obviously, is to play against the best players available. And every time you lose, there's always something to learn from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, anytime Arrow and I lose, we always take something away from it.
Absolutely.
So that's really, my drive to just improve as a player and have a competitive experience is really what keeps me playing the scrims and just my enjoyment for the game in general, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've loved watching you guys play too. By the way, like we definitely look up to you guys, and like we were even analyzing, we weren't even confused why we died when we were in the scrims. We were just like, let's glean as much information as we can about how good Arrow and Days are in this like match right now. Like we were just amazed by like why are they split pushing? Why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? And it was just like,
Yeah.
it was
Right.
mesmerizing.
Well, and we learned a lot about ourselves and as players about what we need to improve on that we're not going to get from just regular queues, because again, in regular queues, it's just mindless running around killing, like,
Mm-hmm.
so there was elements where it was like, and you and Arrow did something very strategic where it seemed like sometimes one of you would flank versus you two stacking, which is like often we don't think about that. Not that we've never flanked before, but there's an element where it was like we consistently saw you guys, flanking a team from two different angles, like intentionally.
Right.
Yeah, which we thought was like, wait, you don't do that because then they'll just 2v1 you and you die. But then like all of a sudden, Arrow would just be like smacking us for like 1200 from. What the heck?
I mean, yeah, we do have a lot of kind of like set strategies of like how to push certain forges and things like that. So that comes into play there.
Yeah.
That's smart.
But yeah, it's all situational, like whether we stick together or how we engage something.
Yeah. Well, Lee, do you want to jump down and chat with Adam, and we can bring him on here? I know he has been waiting patiently.
Of course. Yeah, and I was just going to make one final point, which was I think a point you made earlier, Monty, is also very poignant and part of my perspective, which is it's not just the game community itself, but specifically even the Twitch community. And I do
Yes.
think I took a morale blow when some of the people who were championing Realm during the rough patches, literally, no pun intended,
Yeah.
were also just not streaming anymore. And so it wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna watch this guy and I'm gonna try stream sniping him. I'm gonna watch this guy. Like I'm gonna chat with a little Raisin and just be totally like ask him really dumb questions just for fun. And like it was really fun, and it kind of like, it sounds cheesy, but it was kind of like a family of Realm players that we all would just be, there'd always be someone on.
Yeah.
Even Hunch, like, for anyone who's ever watched Hunch Kato, who's like the best player in Australia, because there's like 10 people who play in Australia, but he was amazing, and he was such a good hunter, and like even he stopped playing. And so it was like all of the staples that I watched had stopped playing, except for Mouse and Arrow and like a few people here and there. And that was part of also like kind of like the state of, like the Realm Avengers, where it was just like, man, like half of the people got dusted away by
I mean, I feel the same way, but like honestly, like so many of the people that I had grown to know and enjoy like playing against in the scrims and everything, like just have stopped playing, and it just feels wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you got, like you guys said, this guy named a Little Raisin. I mean, I know he wasn't that great at the game, but
He was.
it was great to have him around.
Yeah. He's the
Feels
fifth
like a loss without him.
best warrior in Realm Royale.
Don't watch his VODs if you have epilepsy,
Yeah.
because the way he shoots will give you a attack.
Yeah.
It will trigger your. All right, I'm gonna jump down to mic check.
It's okay. Now he's the 5,000th, ranked player in Apex, so it's all good.
Got him.
Just kidding, dude. We love you, Raisin. We're just memeing. But yeah, I mean, and the same thing is true with a lot of elements involved, and with how like all these people leaving on Twitch and that kind of thing. Like I think that we need to give them space to process and take their break as well. I will say, after I took a 3-week break from gaming in general, and Realm came out, Realm's in a really good state right now, I believe. It's not in the best state it could be, but it's in a really good state. And when I came back from taking my break, it was I've been loving it. Like literally, I took 3-week break from gaming. I was playing nothing but Apex before. I took a 3-week break because my graphics card broke. So it was more like a forced break. And then when I got back, I just started playing Realm. and I legit have played maybe like 1 or 2 Apex games since, because Realm has literally been like, it just was like revitalizing for me. So I don't want people to like, I know I was like kind of getting a little saucy earlier, but like give people a break and respect their decision to play what they want to play, but let them know that you miss them too. I do miss seeing some of the other players that used to scrim and used to be in those lobbies and getting fights off them. Like I do miss seeing them in those scrim lobbies. So hopefully they come back soon, and hopefully High Res will announce a tournament and we'll see a huge influx of players, back in the competitive scene. So I think it's good for us to hold down the fort in the meantime, for sure. And maybe by the time they come back, we'll have established a whole new, you know, um, B tier of competitive players ready to give them a really good fight. So I think that's also a beneficial, thing that's happening right now. So are we ready for Adam?
We're ready for Adam.
All right.
Introducing at 5 foot. No, I'm just kidding. All right, here you go.
Hey, Adam, welcome to the show, man.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. What's your question?
So I wanted to talk about like motivation to play the game, because I'm one of the players that took it out during rough patches, is what you call it.
Yeah.
But kind of recently left after Apex came out. So my main reason was just I didn't really leave because of Apex. It was more of like a tournament. I participated in a lot of the scrims as days probably and other things, but like as those started to die down because like it didn't get announced or the tournament got canceled, I may say like that kind of didn't really give me a reason to play the game anymore, because that was like my main motivator. Like every day I'd get on and play for like a couple hours a day, screwing with my mate just to like have a chance like to compete against the best players. And now that wasn't really an option anymore because everyone started dying away from it, kind of like lost motivation.
You still there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you're just saying that was a lot of the reason why you had the Exodus. Like, because because a lot of the players that you wanted to face weren't in the game anymore. Is that what you're getting at?
You cut out like just as you were gonna say the main point.
Yeah. I kind of
really?
missed the end of it. Yeah.
Okay.
So well, you did too, Monty.
Oh.
It was really funny timing.
I mean, like mainly because, well, I played against a lot in the scrims a lot, but as the tournaments kind of died away, like as the announcement, so I kind of stuck it through while the tournaments were like being talked about. Like they're saying, hey, there may be a tournament coming up, so that kind of motivated me to keep playing and have something to play towards, something to scrim towards. But as they kind of got canceled, I lost my reason to be playing like the game. I still enjoyed the game, but it just wasn't the same without the same like competitive like the reason to grind it. Because I'm very competitive and I like playing games, and being competitive is what like motivates. And without that like competitive thing to grind for, it just kind of all went away.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a fair perspective. You guys all there still?
Yep.
Okay. Like, I think that's a fair perspective because, there is I understand at least the nature of like reward for the work that you're putting in. Okay. Because sometimes it isn't necessarily convenient. You know what I mean? Like to always commit to something, because sometimes it does have to be a commitment. If you want to get better, it's a commitment. It's hard work. There are times where you have to put in hours, to play a game to improve. So it's not always just like, oh, I feel like playing a game, I'm going to sit down and play a game. Like, no, like if you want to get better at the game, you have to commit to it, and having an end goal in sight, whether that's like a tournament or whether that's like, just like running. Like a lot of people don't run unless they have a race they're training for. So a lot of people maybe in esports don't play unless they have a tournament they're training for or something to shoot for. So I definitely understand that thought process for sure, Adam. Jeff, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like I get it, and I do feel that to an extent. Like I can't say I have a lot of motivation to scrim and play competitively, just because, so many of those top players aren't really around anymore. It's mostly newer people that play now.
Yeah.
So, Arrow and I got like the best practice playing against, like Adam and duos like Giant and Raisin and Mouse and Hodsick and all those top tier players. We really look forward to playing against them.
Yeah.
Even like Heavenly and Alternate was a really good duo that came back when they announced the tournaments.
Yeah.
But a lot of those guys aren't around now, so I definitely get what Adam means by that.
Yeah.
But hopefully, I really just wish they would announce tournaments again. That would just spark so much life back into it.
Yeah. And I mean, I do think they will have tournaments. People are saying they're not going to have tournaments. I think it's a little bit far-fetched to think that they're not ever going to have another tournament for Realm Royale, and it's just all about the casual. Like,
Right.
I think we need to be a little bit patient. I understand that people are getting impatient because they've been waiting a long time. But at the same time, you have to think there's a huge influx of players that they had with console release. So I do still believe it's going to come. I just think it's not here yet, so.
Right.
Lee, do you have any
No.
thoughts?
No, I agree with them.
Yeah. Well, anything else you wanted to add to that, Adam? We appreciate your perspective and hearing your thoughts on it.
Another thing, I heard you guys touch on Fortnite, and that's something I'd like to talk about too. Like,
Oh, sure.
the competitive scene for that game is, well, it's not really in that good of a state. It's very laggy. I don't know if you guys know much about it, but that's what I recently started getting into.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really have a game to play, and that kind of seemed as a challenge to me because, talking about challenge. So I've started to play that, and even though I don't think I enjoyed it nearly as much as playing in the scrims, it still gives something to grind towards. And like Fortnite, even though their esport really isn't that great of like a thing to play, they're just throwing so much like incentive at it, and
Yeah.
it's drawing a lot more players. Then like Realm, I feel like if they had that same amount of incentive, their core game is really good, and
Mm-hmm.
like they have the material to like have a good esport, but they're just not like announcing things and like putting as much effort as I think a lot of us would like to see towards it, because the game isn't, or at least wasn't, in a horrible state when they first announced the tournament. I think it could have been ready for the tournament, but the delay of that, even though things like Apex came out, I think it really hurt it more than other things.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. I 100% agree with that. Like, when Apex released, the first thing Fortnite did was announce a tournament. Like, announce, like, a huge tournament. Well, that was the first thing Fortnite did. And I think, honestly, that was a large part of what saved that and why it's continuing to thrive and actually now is now still, at least in terms of Twitch viewership, is doing better than Apex is. So, I don't know. I agree with that 100%. What do you guys think? Neutral? Lee? Jeff?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I really do, like I mentioned earlier, the timing was so horrible.
Yeah.
Even if Apex came out and they still had the tournaments for Realm, I'm sure that it wouldn't have been as devastating of a blow,
Yeah.
but it really was that combination that made it lethal.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Adam, I appreciate that perspective, man. I think you're spot on with that last, hot take for sure, because, and I think Realm was in a difficult spot because the console when it first came out was so scuffed. Like nobody could party in PS4, so they had to come up with this element of like, do we hold a tournament, an open tournament for all these players to play in, and then nobody can actually get into a game? Like that would be, I think, if they didn't cancel the tournaments, I think that would have been a bigger disaster for Realm than if they had canceled the tournaments. I personally, that's all speculation. I don't know, and I don't know if anybody knows, but that's just what I would say. So, but yeah, all right, man. Well, hey, thanks for calling in the show, dude. We really appreciate having you.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yep.
See you guys.
See ya.
Peace.
Hey, thanks, Adam.
So I don't think we have any other questions. I at least didn't see any. If anyone else in chat wants to ask, feel free to jump into the Discord. Here's a link. So I'm going to end on one thought. We're just wrapping up here. One of the things that I was thinking about and that I heard the other day was about this guy who, and I'm not going to call him out, but essentially was in another streamer's chat who was talking about the top players in Realm Royale and how he felt bad for them because they were big fish in a little pond, versus maybe they should switch to another game because he thinks they're talented. That was essentially the TLDR, which it was kind of like this thought. And I'm like, I like 1,000% disagree with that, because there's this element where it's like, even in a competitive setting, if you're thinking about being a pro gamer, like by that rationale, everyone should just play Fortnite. Or everyone should just go play League of Legends. Like everyone should just go play a game that has a thriving esports scene and no new games get developed.
Right.
Like I think there is a risk to committing to a game that does not have a certain future to it. But I also think there's an equal risk to switching to a game that has a massive population and being a nobody, you know, because there's a fair amount of luck to being discovered in any esports scene. It like seriously.
Yeah.
So I just really disagreed with that. And I felt like I don't think he meant it in as a disrespectful way. I think he meant it more as a compliment that these guys are good and I think that they would do well because they're talented people. So I think he meant it as a compliment. But at the same time, it was kind of disrespectful because it's like this element of like, it's just not like good logic. Like it just was a bad, like a bad conclusion, you know? Because I feel like this element, and we've talked about this all night, that it's like, I don't know if I would want to be a pro gamer if I had to grind something that was like horrible. You know, if I had to grind a game I did not enjoy, I could not commit to it every single day. I just couldn't. Like, just my personality, I just would get so burnt out from that. So I don't know. That was just an interesting thing that I heard.
Yeah.
So.
I had the same thoughts as you. I mean, I get what he was saying, or whoever this person was. I don't know. I get what they were saying.
Yeah.
But it's like you said, I can't, like, I play Realm because I like it. I can't force myself to play a game that I just can't enjoy.
Yeah.
Like when Fortnite was first becoming a thing, like I wanted to play it and enjoy it because that's, you know, like so many people were doing it, but I just couldn't get myself to enjoy playing it.
Yeah.
I need to be playing, like I play the games I play because I enjoy them, and that's really the only reason. So I don't, you know, I'm not just gonna play a game just even if I was like really good at the game, I wouldn't play it if I didn't like it just for a chance at like becoming a pro or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, that's pretty much our show tonight. I mean, that's all the topics I have for tonight. Do you guys have anything else you want to address or discuss quickly before we end it?
I think I pretty much got everything out that I wanted to say.
Cool. Well, hey, Jeff, I really appreciate you coming on the show and being here with us. Is there somewhere that people can follow you? You're obviously on Twitch. It's twitch.tv/JeffDays?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. And then you're also on Twitter, right? Where can people find you on Twitter?
Yeah, you had it up on the stream earlier, but I'll just type it in chat. It is that is my Twitter and the Twitch name is displayed on the stream right now.
Cool. Hey, man, well, it's really good to hear from you. You can also check out CompTV Lee, twitch.tv/CompTV Lee. Go drop him a follow. You've been streaming pretty regularly, right, Lee? You're almost like every night for a short period of time. Is that right?
I'm about 4-ish days a week, but on a good week, yeah, I'll do every night.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then I'm the Monty Mole. You can follow me here on this channel, twitch.tv/the Monty Mole, or on Twitter, twitter.com/@the Monty Mole_. So, but I appreciate everyone for coming out tonight and participating in the discussion and just, you know, continuing to help this community grow. I think it will continue to grow. I have really been enjoying the game lately. I've been playing a lot of Warrior, which has been fun. So I don't know, continue to get out there, you know, participate in scrims and go Q snipe some people and enjoy the game, you know. We'll be back with the next episode of Realm Roundtable here in the near future. We've got a big guest I'm hoping to have to get on. We're lining up some episodes already, so I'll be excited to have everybody on there. So thanks everyone for hanging out, and we'll catch you another time. Peace.
All right.